If there's one thing I've learned watching men sabotage their own chances with women, it's this. The moment you start trying to prove your worth, you've already lost it. You think you're being attentive, you think you're being supportive, you think you're showing her that you're genuinely interested, but beneath all of it, there's this subtle, needy energy you don't even hear inside yourself. She feels it instantly. It's not in what you say, it's not in what you do, it's in that quiet, invisible tension behind your actions, that tiny, leaning forward impulse that whispers, "Please don't lose interest, please like me, please validate me." And the harsh truth is, that single mistake, this unconscious scrambling for her approval, drains every ounce of masculine presence you have. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to eliminate that mistake from your life forever. You don't notice when it happens. You're talking to her, the conversation's going well, she's smiling, maybe she laughs at something you didn't even think was funny, and suddenly something flips inside you. You start thinking, okay, good, she likes me, don't ruin it. You're no longer in the moment. You're managing impressions. You're calculating how you come across. You're adjusting your tone, your posture, your expression, as if you're editing yourself in real time. You become a character, not a man. And in that exact moment, her interest starts slipping through your fingers because she can feel you abandoning yourself. It's like walking into a room with mirrors on every wall. You stop seeing the room. You stop seeing her. All you see is yourself distorted. You're not listening anymore. You're checking how you look while listening. Every question you ask is no longer curiosity, it's an attempt to keep the vibe alive. You're no longer connected, you're performing. And performance kills authenticity. Women feel that shift faster than you notice it in yourself. They don't even interpret it consciously. It shows up as a sudden hunch, a flicker of doubt, a quiet thought, something feels off. There's a guy I once watched sabotage a perfect interaction in under a minute. He's talking to this girl at a house party. She's clearly engaged, leaning in, playing with her hair, giving him that soft eye attention that women give when they're genuinely into the moment. And then he makes this subtle mistake. He starts over-explaining his jokes. She laughs, then he says, "No, what I meant was," and gives her context she never asked for. She compliments his style, and he starts justifying where he bought the jacket, how much it cost, why he picked it, like he's afraid she might think he cares too much about how he looks. It's this quiet unraveling. He's not being himself anymore. He's trying to manage her perception. What he doesn't realize is that her perception was fine until he tried to influence it. The psychology behind that unraveling is simple. The moment you fear losing approval, you disconnect from your own internal grounding. You stop speaking from your center, you stop holding your natural tone, your body tightens, your voice shifts, you laugh too quickly, you talk a little softer or a little louder than you usually do. You lose the masculine stillness that makes you attractive in the first place. When you're not grounded, she can't relax into the dynamic. Women don't lose interest because you're not perfect. They lose interest because they can feel the pressure of you wanting something from them. Approval, validation, reassurance, it doesn't matter what form it takes. It feels like emotional weight. And emotional weight isn't something a woman wants to carry for a man she just met. You think the mistake is something obvious. You think it's something you say wrong, or a joke that doesn't land, or some detail about your appearance you're insecure about. But those aren't what make women lose interest. The real mistake is the inner tilt, you leaning out of yourself and into her. The moment you start trying to hold her attention instead of letting her experience you naturally. Picture a scene. You're sitting across from her at a cafe. The conversation starts flowing effortlessly. She's playing with her cup, smiling, asking you questions you didn't even expect, and then you feel it, that excitement that comes with possibility, the feeling of, this could go somewhere. But excitement is tricky. If you don't stay centered, excitement turns into need. You start trying to keep the good moment alive instead of letting it breathe. You start filling silences that didn't need filling. She takes a sip of her drink and looks away for a second, and suddenly you feel like you need to say something to bring her back. You don't realize that silence is where comfort grows. You treat silence like danger. And that's the subtle mistake, being afraid of the space between you. Women lose interest when they sense you can't hold yourself without constant positive reinforcement. They lose interest when the vibe depends on their behavior instead of your stability. They lose interest the moment they feel like they're responsible for maintaining your confidence. When you're truly grounded, you're not performing. You're not trying to impress. You're not trying to convince her of anything. You're simply expressing. You're speaking from a place that feels slow, steady, and self-contained. You're listening because you want to hear her, not because silence makes you anxious. You're making eye contact because you're curious about her, not because you're checking whether she's still interested. And the irony is that the moment you stop trying to impress her is the moment she becomes more impressed. You need to understand that attraction isn't built through effort. Effort matters in life, in career, in fitness, but not in presence. Presence isn't effort, it's subtractive. It's you peeling away everything you think you need to do and returning to the simplest version of yourself. And women can feel that shift the same way you can feel when a room suddenly gets quiet. It has weight, it has gravity, it pulls without trying. What would happen if you stopped managing impressions entirely? If you let moments land without rushing to fill them? If you allowed her to experience you instead of trying to explain yourself? That's where confidence lives, in the space, not the noise.
You start seeing the difference the moment you stop chasing micro-reactions. The moment you stop scanning her face to check whether she's still entertained, still attracted, still approving of who you are. Most men live in that state without realizing it. They treat a woman's expression like a scoreboard. She laughs, +1. She looks away, -1. She checks her phone, game over. But a man who holds himself with calm certainty doesn't interpret every movement as a verdict. He doesn't flinch the second the vibe shifts. He doesn't crumble because she needs a moment to think. His emotional center doesn't sit in her hands. And that's exactly why she feels drawn to him instead of drained by him. There's a moment in every interaction where a woman subconsciously tests what you're made of. She doesn't plan it. She doesn't think, let me run a test. It's instinct. She'll pull back a little. She'll tease you. She'll make a remark that challenges your ego just slightly. She'll let the conversation pause to see what you do inside that quiet. And most men fail that moment without ever knowing it happened. They scramble, they compensate, they try harder, they start over-explaining, over-smiling, over-trying. They feel the space and rush to close it because they're terrified of losing something they never actually had. That's the subtle mistake in its purest form, abandoning your center the second you feel uncertainty. Uncertainty is where attraction grows. It's the soil. Women don't want a man who collapses when the moment becomes unpredictable. They want a man who becomes more still, more relaxed, more grounded when things shift. A man who can hold tension without anxiety. A man who doesn't interpret every micro shift as a personal threat. When she steps back even an inch, she's not hoping you panic. She's hoping you stay present. She's hoping you reveal the version of yourself that doesn't need to know the outcome in order to stay whole. Think back to every time you've connected deeply with someone. The conversations you still think about didn't have perfect timing or flawless lines. They had space. They had authenticity. They had little pauses where both of you were simply there, sharing a moment without forcing anything. Attraction isn't created by words. It's created by the energy behind them. If your energy is desperate, your words feel heavy. If your energy is grounded, your silence feels alive. Imagine another scene. You're walking down the street with her, side by side. You're talking about something light, maybe something funny. She bumps your arm gently and smiles. Then for a moment, she grows quiet. She's looking straight ahead, her mind somewhere else. Most men panic internally at that point. They think, oh no, she's bored. I need to say something interesting. They start forcing jokes, hunting for topics, filling the air with noise, and in doing that, they kill the exact comfort that her quiet moment was building. She wasn't losing interest. She was slipping deeper into the connection. She was feeling safe enough to relax. When you can walk beside her in silence without your mind screaming that something is wrong, you're not just showing confidence, you're showing emotional leadership. Women don't lose interest because you don't talk enough. They lose interest because you can't tolerate the parts of the interaction you can't control. You treat every neutral moment like a threat instead of a chance to breathe together. You treat her attention like oxygen instead of a bonus. And no woman wants to feel like a lifeline for a man who hasn't learned to breathe on his own. Once you understand this, everything changes. You start seeing how often your anxiety speaks before you do. You start noticing how much of what you say comes from fear rather than truth. You realize that half the sentences you used to say were never necessary. They were apologies, explanations, clarifications, insecurities dressed as conversation. You were never being too quiet, you were being too afraid of being quiet. And the moment you let go of that fear, you become magnetic in a way that doesn't need effort. Women lean into men who lean into themselves. She feels drawn to the man whose mind isn't scattered, whose attention isn't begging for affirmation, whose presence doesn't rise and fall based on her reactions. She feels drawn to the man who can sit across from her, look into her eyes, and remain fully himself, unshaken and unapologetic. When you live from that place, you don't need to impress her. She impresses herself through how she feels around you. This is why men who try too hard always lose to men who don't. Not because women like indifference, but because indifference and groundedness can look similar from the outside. The difference is internal. Indifference is emotional withdrawal. Groundedness is emotional sovereignty. One pushes her away, the other pulls her in without trying. One says, "I don't care about you." The other says, "I'm here, fully, but I'm not depending on your reaction to stay centered." The subtle mistake isn't caring. The subtle mistake is caring from insecurity instead of strength. When you're grounded, you can care without collapsing. You can desire without chasing. You can connect without clinging. You can express without performing. And that's the man a woman can fall for, because she senses you can hold your own life, your own emotions, your own path, without needing her to carry any of it for you. A woman doesn't lose interest because you're imperfect. She loses interest because she senses you losing yourself. You come into the interaction as a whole man and slowly erode into a version of yourself that's edited, sanitized, agreeable, over-accommodating. You start protecting the moment instead of participating in the moment. And the moment women feel you protecting something, they know you're afraid of losing it. Fear kills attraction faster than any wrong word ever could. So you return to yourself. You slow your breathing. You speak from your chest instead of your throat. You feel your feet on the ground. You listen with curiosity instead of insecurity. You give your presence without apology and your silence without panic. You stop trying to win her interest and start embodying the man she would be interested in. Because the truth is simple. She doesn't want your performance. She wants your presence. And presence requires nothing but you. Unfiltered, grounded, complete. You don't get her attention by chasing it. You get her attention by not abandoning the parts of you that made her notice you in the first place. You don't get her interest by proving your worth. You get her interest by living it. You don't get her back by overthinking. You get her back by becoming the man who never leaves himself again.